Hi, I'm Jen Smith. I'm the program director for Grow New York, which is a business competition designed to attract innovation into the agri-food system in upstate New York, specifically central New York, the Finger Lakes, and the Southern Tier. I'm going to do a couple of things this afternoon. I'm going to share a little bit about the Grow New York program. I'm going to introduce you to some of our winners from this year's competition, which just occurred a couple of weeks ago in Syracuse, and have a conversation with them about their entrepreneurial journey generally and here in the Grow New York region. We'll break for Q&A after each of the startup founders has a chance to talk about their business. And then again at the end of the webinar. So if you have questions, please, put them in there as they arise, and we'll handle them in the flow. So the competition, as I mentioned, just happened. It's a $3 million annual competition with a $1 million top prize, two $500,000 and four $250,000 prizes, as well as an Audience Choice Award. It culminates the competition, right? This live pitch that we do each year in November, and we complement it with programming that addresses the needs of the agri-food industry in upstate New York. This year, and I think there's a link that we can drop into chat for viewers. This year, we built the programming of the symposium of panel conversations around a report that my team, along with the Center of Excellence for Food and Agriculture at Cornell Agritech, published. It's formally called a Call for Innovation. We affectionately call it the Ag Needs Report. And what that report does is lays out some of the common constraints that farmers and food producers throughout New York have identified as kind of holding them back that technology could address. So not policy issues, not workforce development issues, but really those things that software, hardware, new ideas, and new technologies could go ahead and address. So it was a great opportunity to bring those topics to life at the symposium, at the summit. And of course, it is a call for innovation because these are the kinds of startups that we're hoping to see embed themselves in the Grow New York region. And I think you'll find that the three startups that we have today really model that. We can go to the second slide. Grow New York, the program, is cluster theory in action. And the reason that we are attracting startups here is to keep the agri-food system vital, right? To keep moving us forward and build on our momentum. So we're trying to accomplish the development of an innovation ecosystem, but also to support existing industry as we do so. And we can go to the third slide. There's a lot of talk in economic development about ecosystems. And I guess this is just to say that, we really do have an intense, productive, and excellent food and ag ecosystem here in the Grow New York region. We've got abundant natural resources, an exceptionally large percent of the working farmland, major industry players at every point from the farthest upstream kind of soil technologies through to consumer packaged goods and every stop in between. We've got world-class research institutions, an abundance of students who are eager to participate in this work, and a robust incubator and acceleration community. We've got a few incubator hotspots here. So there really is this support system in this weave. And if you're out there as a startup who is working in or could be working in food and ag, get in touch. Visit grow-ny.com, and you can reach us at grow-ny@cornell.edu. We'd love to answer questions. We're hoping to see the applications for our fourth year of competition open in April of 22. So enough about the high level. I'm going to go ahead and introduce you one at a time to the three startup founders that we have here today. And I'm going to start with Jay Farmer, who is the CEO and founder of Ascribe Bioscience. He's an inventor, a chemist, a repeat startup executive. And Ascribe Bioscience took home a $500,000 prize at this year's summit. And Jay will tell us a little bit about what Ascribe Bioscience does.
Thank you, Jen. So Ascribe, I guess, first of all, we're already located here in the Grow New York region. So we're an Ithaca-based startup company. It's really our mission to improve the way farmers protect crops, to find solutions that are less harmful to the environment, better for human health, and most importantly, perhaps solutions that are really practical and that will work for farmers. I think there's a real gap in that. The vast majority of cropland currently is protected through the use of chemical fungicides. These are toxic molecules that are specifically designed to kill the microbes that are causing the issues. And there are a lot of sustainability problems with that. And one of the most severe pertains to soil health. And so I think in moving toward a more holistic and sustainable way to raise food, there's a real need for solutions that can control these pathogens, but not damage the soil and the environment in the process. And so Ascribe's technology is based on naturally occurring small molecules, and we're really trying to leverage the innate abilities that plants already have to defend themselves to protect crops. Most simply described as a vaccine for plants, in that these are molecules that plants respond to by priming their defenses, making them more tolerant to pathogens. And so we're about 8 people. I'm focused on developing this technology and delighted to be part of the Grow New York program.
Great. Thank you. I'm going to now introduce Jamie Sonoville, who is the CEO and founder of Agritrack. Jamie's also a serial entrepreneur. You'll note a theme here, working in SaaS, app development, and web design. And Agritrack was the winner of this year's Audience Choice Award, which is sponsored by Wegmans. And Jamie, interested to hear you tell us what Agritrack is about. Oh, Jamie, you're on mute.
Only the techie would be on mute.
I wasn't even sure you could control it or whether it was.
I didn't know, but so at Agritrack, we like to say that we're creating an ecosystem of data-driven farmers. And what that really boils down to is creating a network of farmers, and we're specifically starting in the apple industry because that's what I know the best. We're taking the processes that farmers use on the farm every day, and we're providing software that helps them really identify their inputs and their outputs. And so by better understanding your true cost of production can help every business better understand, what kind of inputs they need to provide to maximize the output. And what we found is, these types of software applications exist all over in all of our lives. Everything we do, people are analyzing data. And I'm a 5th generation apple grower. My husband is an apple grower. I live in the tech world, but found that we were kind of slow to adopt some of these technologies in the apple industry. And my husband was struggling on our farm, and at one point in time said, "Hey, it'd be great if you could leave what you're doing in the tech world to come back and help me." And I built him an app instead because I was unwilling to give up my IT side of things that I love. And since then, we've just had some really interesting partners sign on to use our app. They're loving what they're seeing, and we're providing the ability for people to track things that were once very difficult and labor intensive to track. We're automating some processes that, again, were very manual. And then we're also helping farmers ensure that they stay in compliance with some of the Department of Labor regulations that are ever changing in this industry. And so by us staying on top of some of those things, we're able to ensure that not only the farmers are in compliance, but the employees that work for them are, receiving all of the Department of Labor benefits that they should receive as well, and making sure that everybody ends up a winner in the end. And so once we've aggregated all this data from the farmers are using, we're then taking that data and analyzing it, and we're able to provide that to people outside of the farming community. So all of those ancillary businesses like packers and processors for juice, applesauce, fresh apples in the grocery store, right to the grocery stores, to the storages that store the apples, to the insurance companies and banks. And so they're all able to, if they subscribe to our service, better understand what's happening on those family farms, where we used to say that data was very siloed, use an ag term there, and we kept that data pretty tight between farm to farm to farm. And now we're able to create these data channels that share this data with the people that could benefit most from it, which ultimately helps the entire industry continue to grow and become more efficient.
Fantastic. We've already got some questions coming in for both of you. But before we get to the questions, our third panelist is Trish Thomas, who is the CEO and co-founder of Everybody Eat, another serial entrepreneur. Before launching this Better For You CPG brand, Trish worked in digital startups. Everybody Eat took home the $1 million top prize, joining year one's Real Eats and year two's Seuss Technology. So Trish, tell us about Everybody Eat.
If Jamie could have built an app for it, I would have been really excited. So Everybody Eat evolved from a real personal challenge that I had, as well as my co-founder, Nicole Wilson. So I was diagnosed with a whole bunch of autoimmune diseases and I found that I could manage them if I changed my diet. So I was able to get off of $2,000 a year of medicine by removing gluten, dairy, soy, corn, and eggs. And it might be different for everybody, but that was my experience. But we have 6 boys, and I suddenly found myself eating over here or not eating while I was feeding them. And it drove me crazy that I couldn't go out to eat anymore. I couldn't go to parties. There was literally like nothing to eat. And Nicole Wilson, my co-founder, her different family members in her house have gluten intolerance, dairy intolerance, soy intolerance. And as we started to look at the problem, what we put together was that 60% of US households now are impacted by a special diet. It might be a medically mandated dietary restriction like food allergies, in my case, autoimmune disease, other inflammatory conditions, or a dietary preference, which could be lifestyles based like paleo, keto, or values based like vegan, kosher. But all of these special diets were now the norm, not the difference, except that the food industry hadn't kept up with them. So a lot of free from food either doesn't taste good, so people without special diets wouldn't eat it, or within one brand, you might find some ingredients in one product, but some ingredients in another product. So people with food allergies spend a year of their life reading labels, and or foods that might be free from or allergen free are usually manufactured in facilities that still pose a risk of cross contact from the ingredients they want to avoid. So say you're someone that has celiac disease, you have to avoid gluten. So you might see something that says gluten free on the front, only to flip over the package and read made in a facility that also processes wheat. Doesn't work. So that was the problem that we set out to solve, which was really eating with other people. And the only way to do that was to make food that tasted great, didn't pose risks of allergens, inside the brand or within the manufacturing thing. And what we learned is that the social and emotional isolation that comes with a special diet is really the problem that we're solving. So we want to bring everybody back to the table, literally and figuratively.
I love that. Some of the questions that have come in actually that really queued up well, Trish, for you. What does the $1 million prize mean for everybody? I mean, we'll talk a little about the competition later, but maybe you can talk about what your company uniquely is going to bring to the region here and what that $1 million prize means.
The $1 million prize is going to mean so much for us because it is going to allow us to go from being a snack company that right now in the market, we have our Everybody Eats Snack Thins and we're launching our crisp breads. But our vision has always been an entire portfolio of food that people could eat. And we've developed about 25 products, but we could only do one thing at a time. So we've had to build baking capabilities. And the Grow New York project or prize money is going to allow us to open up everything in the wet supply chain. So that means if we were to do it without Grow New York, we probably wouldn't have gotten to it till 2024, frankly. But with the Grow New York prize money, we're going to partner with somebody in the Grow New York region that already has a refrigerated supply chain and launch dips, salad dressings, condiments, all the things that bring flavor to a meal. So we really are going to be able to make it easier for people to eat because we're going to be able to bring the flavors into the market, not just snacks. And we wouldn't be able to do that without the prize money.
Great. Good. Another question that came in, Jay, this one's for you. I think you mentioned having 8 employees at Described Bioscience. You've got a deep technical background. How did you build the team? What was the process of identifying who you needed and finding them and bringing them on board all about?
Yeah. Maybe I'll answer that in a slightly tangential way, which is to acknowledge that, one of the concerns in the area, so again, we're in Ithaca, so a fairly rural part of New York State. One concerns that investors often have is, will you be able to attract highly technical, skilled talent that's necessary for an enterprise like this? And this is an issue I've faced with other startups in the area. I think the good news is it's really remarkably easy to attract that necessary talent. We've been really pleasantly surprised in building up our own team that especially in looking for employees that have experience with plant science, agricultural related fields. They're actually really excited to come here because of the all of the R&D resources that already exist here between Cornell University and Agritrack, Boyce Thompson Institute for Plant Science. There's already kind of the center of gravity in that research field, and so I think that lessens the risk for a potential employee. If they're relocating here, bringing their family, you don't want to be in a situation where the perception is if for some reason this doesn't work out and they need another job, they'll have to move again. So I think we're starting to see that kind of critical mass where people are comfortable moving here and have confidence that, come what may, there's lots of opportunity around. So we've actually been really successful hiring great folks.
That's encouraging to hear. And again, it goes to that notion of we hear the term ecosystem a lot. What does it really mean? And it means that there's space to move laterally, up, et cetera, within the region. Terrific. Jamie, a question that came in for you is about the addressable market. And is this technology, what you're doing, is the software applicable only to apples and apple growers, or is it something that you see being able to expand a little?
That's a great question. So I mentioned that we're starting with apples. And again, the reason for that is I know apples, I know the industry, I know the needs. But no, the software is not going to stop with the apple industry. Our intent is to conquer this industry, to move into the upstate New York. I mean, we're here in Wayne County. That's where I'm located, where we're number 3 in the number 3 in the country for apple production. We kind of go back and forth a little bit. That's huge. And being right here in the center of it, it makes sense to conquer this industry and then replicate what we're doing and continue to expand and work with all the other commodities. We can start right here in New York. We have tons of number 1 commodities and just really kind of like a rinse and repeat of what we're doing with our software and apples. And when you look at the total addressable market, across the country, there's over 2 million farms that would fit within what we would consider to be our target market size. And that's a pretty hefty chunk of business to go after. So,
yeah. I'm excited to see how you grow. Great. Well, I'm going to return us to the questions that we spoke about before the panel began. Let's talk about the challenges that you've faced. And I actually think that each of you has a fairly unique story about the challenges you faced with scaling up. And as I mentioned, previous startup experience is on the table here. Trish, why don't we start with you?
Well, I can tell you that when we started, we didn't contemplate a global pandemic. So we officially launched our products on March 1st, 2020. On March 11th, we had a meeting and I said, shut it all down. And by that point, we had built 1,000 square foot prototype kitchen here in Evanston. I'm just south of Northwestern University. And we had planned on starting with food service because any institution, whether it's a school or a hospital or a government that receives federal funding under the law, has to accommodate special diets. So when we launched on March 1st, shut it down on March 11th, I wasn't sure what was next. And we moved 900 cases of product into my living room and set about reconfiguring everything. And in some ways had to start over. So we realized where we were with the business was proof of concept. So as the pandemic was taking hold, we were actually now running around with bags of snack thins, going into retailers, asking them to put us on their shelves. And they probably thought we were a little crazy, right? Because this is when everyone's going to online shopping. But that's what we did. So we ran around the Midwest, and by August, we were selling everything that we could make. We had thought that we could get more out of this little kitchen, but with COVID protocols, we couldn't physically get enough people in the same space. So this time last year, we had to very quickly in 70 days jump to an 8,500 square foot facility. And now we're trying to jump to a 30 to 50,000 square foot facility. And the manufacturing piece of this, if we thought it was going to be difficult, it's been about 20,000% more difficult trying to do it in the middle of a global pandemic where machinery arrives 6 months later, COVID protocols with employees, retail being shut down, you can't sample. So it has been like literally one thing after another that is different than just the usual challenges you have when you launch a brand. Trying to launch it in the middle of what's been going on since 2020 has really had its own set of things with it.
Yeah. Yeah. But I know that you've been very adaptable, and here's to being able to sample in stores in the near future.
Yes, well, we are doing some of that. We quickly went to producing 1 ounce bags, and then, one grocery store was sticking them in the grocery bags that people bought it. I mean, I don't know. I think that the biggest skills an entrepreneur has to have is an ability to ask for help all the time, have difficult conversations, and the tools to sort of manage through adversity. And let's just say that we are where we are today as a business because our management team has those skills above and beyond our product, because it has been a year and a half to just ask for help, have difficult conversations, and practice the discipline of saying, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? And then pedaling backwards from that to take action.
Great. Jamie, how about you?
Well, so a little unlike Trish, COVID it changed our business, but it actually, I think, helped in the sense that people were looking for ways to significantly reduce costs in their businesses, and implementing software was like the right time to try something new, because we're finding that we're saving farms upwards of 10% of their net income, which is significant. And so that could be a part-time employee that our software can create savings there, or we like to say, put the farmer back in the farm doing what they do best, let them farm. And so we found that people were looking for ways to reduce costs there, but also we provide mobile time clocks that allow people to use time clocks out in the field. So they no longer have to come into a shop and be around other employees and clock in for the day. And so besides the savings farmers are seeing, we were able to kind of create that no contact point and allow people to get back to work and do what they had to do. So I think that was a motivator for some people to move to Agritrack. But it did make it difficult in terms of reaching out to selling to people who didn't know about Agritrack, right? It's easy to sell to people who we know, who are seeing what we're doing. But it was difficult to drive around to farms and visit people and show them what we could do because of COVID. And so we really utilized some of the online technology that we're all using now. And we started selling Agritrack literally from this desk right here, just calling farms and setting up demos and testing it, and found that actually is a really successful sort of sales cycle for us that we thought would be more of a last resort. And we found that we don't really need to go to the farms and show people how to use it because they're so familiar now with connecting online, seeing how things work online, and we can do our entire onboarding process right through Zoom. So COVID was a game changer for us. And it sort of forced people to see things from a tech standpoint, which was really helpful in scaling this business.
Yeah. Has broadband and coverage been an issue?
Yeah. So we built our app, the tablet application that allows a farm manager or farm owner to manage crews of people at once. Doesn't require an internet connection until you're ready to sync that data. And so we knew going into this that there's a lot of farms in our area that don't have internet, they don't have cell coverage. And a lot of our competitors use tools that require cell connections out in the field. So people were looking at bringing in boosters and antennas. And we said, why do we have to have that? Right? We don't have to have everything syncing like to the second. If we can bring it back to a shop at a break time or at the end of the day and sync up all of that data, that could be a huge cost savings. Now, if you have internet, our tablet will work and you'll be up to the minute live with what you're doing. But we found that very early on that was a strategy for us to use for sales tactic.
Great. Smart thinking. Jay, how about you? What challenges with this or your previous startup have you had to grapple with?
Yeah. I'm struck that for us and for the prior startups I've been involved with, all of which are sort of chemical R&D based research. It makes me a little envious of either consumer products or IT, where you can get it in the hands of customers, start actual sales pretty rapidly. There tend to be huge barriers between the initial research and customer sales in the fields that I'm more familiar with. And those typically, if it's pharmaceutical, you need FDA approval, which takes years and hundreds of millions of dollars. If it's a sustainable polymer, those types of products aren't profitable until one builds a world scale plant. And so they require enormous investments and getting through some regulatory processes before you put those products in the hands of customers. And so it becomes a very different equation of analyzing at an early stage of a startup. What are the critical path things that have to be proven out with this product to convince ultimately, either the startup needs to grow to make those investments, or one has to convince a partner to make those types of investments. And so the scaling there looks quite different. And I think, again, if you're looking for advice for other startups that face similar market dynamics, it's really to look understand the whole product chain, and look at the product from the perspective of a future company that has the resources to actually manufacture it and bring it to market, and really focus on solving the key problems that will eventually enable that. But that tends to be something that's years in the future, which can be daunting. But still, I think startups, even though those ultimate investments are better suited to large companies, startups play a really critical role of recognizing the potentials of those technologies early on, pulling them out of the lab, doing the fundamental work that has to be done to really prove that technology has commercial value. And so,
great. Wondering, and this is a little bit of a departure from what I'd laid out, but just as you've been talking, each of you, I'm interested to know, and Jay, I'll start with you. What kind of customer discovery went into launching this startup?
Yeah, for us, I kind of owe the National Science Foundation and I-Corps program a big shout out. So some of our company's earliest funding came through a small business innovation research grant from the National Science Foundation. And the NSF as a funding agency they put a lot of emphasis on commercial viability of the technologies that they invest in early on. And so one of the requirements of taking that funding was that we participate in an I-Corps customer discovery project. And I'll go ahead and confess that I was a little skeptical, honestly. We had such a small team, and we had very specific technical issues that we needed to solve and work that had to be done. And I initially thought that this was sort of a distraction. We knew the market. We knew generally what this would be good for. Let's focus on the science. And I got that dead wrong, to be honest. The I-Corps proved to be incredibly helpful to us. So my co-founder and our CTO, Murli Manohar, got out, went across the country, visited wheat farmers, really got hands-on experience through discussions with these farmers. And, we learned a few things about the market that we didn't already understand, but I think more importantly, we made those connections. And, ultimately some of the advisors that are now on our advisory board came from that process. In one case, an investor was somebody that we first touched base with through that customer discovery. It's fantastic to get out there and really talk to the end user. Don't stay in the lab or the kitchen or
Right. Open it up and get out there and actually engage. Don't be a solution in search of a problem, but refine it so that your problem solving. I would be remiss at this moment if I didn't mention that we, the organization that the Grow New York program is run under the Center for Regional Economic Advancement here at Cornell, runs I-Corps programming. And in fact, right now and through tomorrow, we have the opportunity for you to apply. I'm going to ask my colleague Hope to dig up the link to the application. We can get it in the chat here before we end today. We're effectively doing an I-Corps mini course specifically for ag tech companies, where there's some pre-work, but the meat of this particular I-Corps course will occur at the American Farm Bureau Federation's annual conference, which will be the first Thursday, Friday, Saturday in Atlanta, Georgia. And we're keen to get companies that are ready to do some deep discovery. There'll be training around how to perform meaningful customer discovery, and then the opportunity to be let loose on the largest convening of Farm Bureau members, in the country. So we'll get that link out there. Please do apply if you're somebody who's working in ag tech who is ready to commercialize their idea. So Jamie, why don't you tell me about your customer discovery?
Sure. So we are growers, right? So our connection to other growers in this industry is vast. Both being fifth generation farmers, we've got family members that span New York State in the apple industry. And I've got a pretty large network of people that are also in industries that connect to the apple industry. So the first customer discovery we did was literally with people in my family saying, like, what are your major pain points? I know what ours are on our farm, but are we unique to this, or are there other people with these similar problems? And right away, we found that there were a lot of overlapping similarities between each of these individual family farms. And so from there, I went and met with a labor broker who helps secure farm labor in our area. And she had a pretty good handle on a lot of the challenges farmers were facing, and was able to help us sort of guide that a little bit more quickly than going to each individual grower in this area. And she's been pivotal in helping us work on some of those compliance pieces that save farmers tons of time. And from there, she's invited us to come to her grower meetings. We've gotten to know farms that we didn't know beforehand. And I open up my office here every once in a while, have coffee and donuts, and invite growers in. Not during the harvest season. That is like a hard, not going to happen during harvest. But other times of the year, come in and I'd love to show them what I'm working on. And we just have conversations about, how does your farm work? Do you pick on sleds or bin trailers? Do you have 4, 6, 8 people in a crew? How do you manage this? And every conversation I have is a takeaway to help me build an application that is specifically suited to this industry.
Great. Trish, how about you? I mean, it sounds like you have a table at home full of potential customers.
Well, what's so interesting is that if we hadn't done the customer discovery work, we would have gotten it wrong. Because when we started out, we were just trying to make food free from allergens, but I was so close to the problem that I couldn't see it, to the point that we actually redesigned our kitchen so that where my kitchen sink is, now there's a booth in front of it. So my whole family could eat dinner and I could do the dishes and talk to them, because I wasn't even eating the same food. So it didn't even occur to me there was a solve for the problem. So when we went out, and our co-founder, Dick, who's also my husband, he went out and he talked to about 100 people. And he's the one that heard that the biggest problem was actually eating with other people. I just wanted to eat, and I hadn't thought through the problem of what goes into and what the loss is of not being able to share the same food with the people you love. And when that light bulb went off after looking at that customer discovery data and hearing kids talk about feeling like they were freaks because they had to bring weird food and sit at weird tables, and we found out there's all this shame around this issue that shouldn't be there. But if you're someone with a special diet in a social situation, you usually have the choice of not eating, bringing your own food, eating but risking getting sick, or maybe telling the host what your dietary issues are and hoping they'll accommodate you. And so that's why, to us, success is actually being able to walk into a Super Bowl party or something and being able to eat, because we've created awareness around the issue and the social norms. But the customer discovery process, if we hadn't done it because we were so close to the problem, we would have gotten it wrong. And so now when we evaluate what food we'll bring into market, it has to taste so good that people will eat it without a special diet, or we can't make it. That's our gatekeeper. And that really came out of the customer discovery process.
Yeah. Yeah. And it created a tremendous amount of expanded opportunity for you, right? It's a larger market that way. Terrific.
Well, but the thing was that also came up that goes to the Grow New York competition, is that during that research, we also figured out that 50% of free-from entrepreneurs quit because they have nowhere to make their food. So they can't go through a real customer discovery process because the people they need to try their food with can't risk cross contact with contamination. So that's where a big part of our plan moving forward is to be able to provide contract manufacturing for other entrepreneurs and help make a bigger pie of delicious food people can eat.
Yeah, it's one of the things that excites me most about your win is kind of bringing that capability into the region and putting us on the map in the Grow New York region as a place where free from food can safely be produced. So great. Well, we've heard a little bit about advice from each of you, but more deliberately, I'm interested to hear what is the kind of most urgent advice you would give yourself at the beginning of your path, your journey as an entrepreneur. What do you wish you'd known, that kind of one piece? And Jay, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, so it's a fascinating question. I think a big piece of it has to do with just having realistic expectations about the time involved, right? I think it's a lot of entrepreneurs, the enthusiasm for the project and the passion for it tend to lead us to maybe underestimate the time required, and that there's two aspects to that. There's the actual number of calendar months to get from point A to point B. But there's also the time commitment on the part of the entrepreneur. And I really think that what it speaks to is that, do something you really care about, that you really love. And I think one thing that strikes me about this panel is that's what clearly brings us all together, right? Is that this passion for, we're not developing these technologies just as a way to, have a job or wealthy. That's not the point, right? It's having a passion for making improving the world in some way. And so if you don't have that, then find a different career path. But
very wise. Trish, how about you?
Ask, and fearlessly ask. I mean, I'm old, so I've been doing this for over 35 years now. And that what I've learned is that no just means no. And it's actually the beginning of the conversation of what people will say yes to. And if I could tell my younger self anything, it's never be afraid to ask anybody anything. Because what the weird dynamic is that when people ask us for help, we usually think it's a compliment, or, oh, Jen thinks enough of me to ask my advice or ask my assistance. And I'm so happy to give it to you because it makes me feel important and needed. But yet when we flip the tables, if somebody asks me for help, I think, oh, I'm so happy to be asked. But then too often our brains go to, well, I can't ask that, I might be a burden, or they might think I'm stupid, or they don't think I know what I'm talking about. And nothing could be farther from the truth. So we look at this all at an unconscious level, that when people ask us, we think one thing, but when it's us asking, we think something different. And when we could shut down the voices in our heads and just ask, and then be quiet and listen for the answer, amazing things happen. And I sort of gamified the asking. Yesterday, I asked somebody for $5 million, and I just wanted to see what they'd say. And they didn't say no, they didn't say yes, but I got next steps. So it kind of just, when you play it as a game, you can take bigger and bigger asks and more fearlessly. And the more people get comfortable asking for help, the better the world's going to get.
Right. Yeah. I was at Upstate Capital, which is a membership network of investors and M&A professionals and that showcases and nurtures startups in the region. They have their annual award ceremony acknowledging successful deals and whatnot. Yesterday, it was great, but a repeated theme from all of the startups that were awarded was, be open to help, ask for help, be open to assistance, ask for assistance. So it's a theme that resonates. Jamie, how about you?
Similarly to Trisha's, don't be afraid to ask. I would say, don't be afraid to try. Don't be afraid of failure. I think too often we say, oh, that's too hard, or I'm not an expert in that, or why would somebody want to buy that from me, or why would somebody see me as an expert in that area? I'm new to this. And it's important, I think, to realize that we are each experts in our service that we're providing, right? Like we know it better than anybody else because we've built it. And don't be afraid to fail. You learn from every failure, right? Like you have to find a learning opportunity wherever you can. And that just makes you bigger and better and ready to scale further and faster each time.
Great. Well, at the risk of plugging the Grow New York program shamelessly, I am going to ask you about that experience because I think, there's a segment of the audience that are startup curious. And, the Grow New York program is focused on the agri-food system, but in New York State, we are lucky enough to have competition programs that support other sectors. Photonics and optics with Luminate in Rochester. We have, big data and automation and robotics in Syracuse. We have a geographically focused competition with 43 North in Buffalo. So how was the overall experience of Grow New York, and then to make it specific to the Grow New York program, why the Grow New York program the Grow New York region is the right place for you to be developing your business? And Jamie, I'll start with you.
Sure. So I think that the Grow New York program really helped me sort of refocus my energy on the business. So I created Agritrack as a tool to help us. From there, I started to create some sales, and I looked at Agritrack initially as more maybe a lifestyle business. And I can make money doing this. I'm just going to do this. And I started to get some traction, and decided I'm going to apply for Grow New York because I think that that's the next step to take. In doing so and becoming a finalist, and working with my mentor, Mike Dredida, it helped me in a very abbreviated amount of time take all those big ideas I had about where Agritrack could maybe go someday and what I was thinking, and boil it down to Agritrack is this and is going to go here, and what are the steps I need to take to do that. And so I really think that between the mentorship and meeting people and networking with people prior to Grow New York, during Grow New York, and certainly after, has helped me see this company in the light that I sort of always knew was there. But I think it's that thing about don't being afraid to try. It gives you a little bit of affirmation that what you're doing is right and does make sense. And it was just sort of that push I needed to really go for it. So, and in terms of the region, this is apple country. It would be crazy for me to not want to do some kind of economic development program in this region, specifically around ag, when I have, born and raised in ag, grew up on an apple farm, went to Cornell, have always been connected to the industry. And, Grow New York is just ripe for this. So.
Great. Jay, how about you? Why upstate New York?
Yeah, I think, similar to Jamie in some sense, we're also homegrown technology. So, the initial discoveries were made at the Boyce Thompson Institute that's located on Cornell's campus. So we were already here in that sense. So a lot of, we were really delighted to have an opportunity like this specific to our region. But I guess we're already here, but we learned an incredible amount about I think we tend to focus pretty narrowly on Ithaca and our immediate surroundings. I think one of the eye-opening things about the Grow New York process, leading up to the pitch competition, was just all the sort of the realization of the full regional resources that are there, and gaining a much better understanding of how that can support us as we move toward pilot manufacturing and even developing our crop protection solutions to be more relevant to regional growers. So
yeah, I will say for myself, prior to this role running the Grow New York program, which is really focused on scalable startups and getting them to scale quickly, right? How do we see, hockey stick growth? How do we therefore see all of the opportunity creation that's associated with that, right? New jobs are more likely to be created by startups than existing companies, et cetera. Prior to this role, I was working with, family farmers looking to get into value add to kind of keep their farms viable longer, and wasn't aware as a result, because it hadn't been part of my beat, my bailiwick, the resources around new business enterprise incubation that we have up here is truly astounding. New York State does a really magnificent job of supporting startups. It's exciting. So just tooting the region's horn. I'm a sincere cheerleader. Trish, how about you?
Well, I'm sitting half a country away cheerleading, and yesterday sent something to somebody in the state of Illinois that said, you should really pay attention to what they're doing in New York, because I know more about the resources in New York than I do in our state. But I think that, like Jamie, I wasn't going to enter the competition because I saw it. I found out about it through my academic email, loved it. But then I had a call with Brian and I said, well, I don't know. What are we going to do in New York? There's only like, we're small. How do we expand? And I wasn't going to enter. And then I thought about it and I said, well, if we get invited to the finalist list, part of the process is we'll figure it out. So the unlock for me in participating wasn't that I had to have all the answers in applying, was that the competition was designed with the time and the mentorship and the support to figure out what we could do in the Grow New York region, because we really didn't have a clue. I actually thought I wanted to make nutritional yeast out of beets that was organic, and that's where I started because it's a problem. And so trusting the competition enough to give you the resources to answer the question, why Grow New York, was the first step. But I think that the network effect of the whole thing is really the payoff. I'm sitting here listening to Jamie, and we're about to submit a National Science Foundation grant for an SBIR. And I'm like, wait, we need a tech partner. Jamie's the perfect tech partner, right? I've had a couple other people that I met while I was in New York reach out to me about investors to meet in the Midwest that they would not have known. I've actually been in contact with a couple people I know in California that are in this space that I'm like, you need to enter this next year because you should be building your business in New York. So I think that it's way bigger than Grow New York, but when Grow New York becomes the epicenter that makes these relationships possible, everything expands, and then you lift all boats, right? And like our team in Chicago is excited, right? I think they might be the only people really excited to come to Ithaca and Rochester in January, but they're coming. It can't be worse than Chicago. But I think that it's the network effect that the humans bring to it that will pay off itself for years and years to come. And then for those of us outside the region, we bring our networks back to you. And then that people like, Jamie and Jay, we know each other. So who knows what's going to happen next?
Right. Yeah. Cluster theory in action, right? Startups do best when they're around other startups and when they're supported by an existing industry that has the resources that they need. We have a question from the audience. This is for you, Trish. It's from Bumju. They say, I was gluten-free and a lot of the gluten-free food was loaded with sugar and chemicals to compensate for the loss of flavor and texture. How are you creating flavor?
So the name of our parent company is actually Whole and Free Foods. So our design constraint going into it was that it had to be whole foods based, healthy oils, and free from the top 14 allergens. So we don't have refined sugar in any of our food, including our cookies. So how we created flavor was we actually used real food. We used real herbs, real spices, no frankenfood. All the ingredients are on the front of the pack. And if you can't understand it, it's not going into our food. So the flavor actually comes from the food.
Great. Jay, a question came in for you from Sarah. You described Ascribe's technology as a vaccine for plants. What would you say to folks who are concerned that this would negatively affect their crops?
Yeah, I guess what I'd say is that this, the vaccine, it's a good analogy for people to kind of at least initially grasp how it works. But this is really, this is something plants do naturally all the time. The plants have remarkable abilities to sense their environment. I think we don't often give plants credit for that type of activity, but this is something that plants have evolved to do naturally. So there's really no risk that this is going to harm plants.
Superb. All right. Well, we have gone through, I believe, all of the questions from the audience. I feel like you guys did a great job of not only, as you would, laying out the technology and the innovation that you're bringing to the region, but also kind of what the experience of engaging in the region is like. Obviously, two of you are from here already, but and we're excited to have Trish and Nicole join us from Chicago. So, barring any questions popping in, I believe that that this is a wrap. I'm really grateful to each of you for participating. Again, grow-ny.com is the Grow New York program's website. We are planning to open applications for our 4th competition in April of 2022. You can check out the Ag Needs Report. You can see the live pitches of each of these Grow New York winners, as well as the other 17 teams that competed in November on our website, as well as the panels addressing some of the questions and needs that we have in the agri-food system here in the Grow New York region. So thank you very much.